recording. So we're going to go 3, 2, 1. So thank you for tuning in to today's Health Philanthropy Summit. It's offered by Health Giving, and it's in partnership with the Ohio AHP. This session is titled Advancing a Strategic Fundraising Vision During COVID-19. It's very understandable that a lot of us feel unmoored in such turbulent times, but we can keep looking ahead. Strategically, we have to look ahead. We all need to come up with new pathways forward. And the process of building and developing a new path and a new strategic vision, it brings our teams together and a lot of the important stakeholders within our health systems together to connect what we do on a day-to-day basis to a much larger vision and to set some realistic and some timely goals. During a crisis like COVID-19, having a sense of purpose and direction is absolutely critical, as we have multiple competing priorities that can easily deplete our staff time and our resources. So it's a great privilege for me to welcome to this question and answer session, Tim Koder, the president of the Foundations for Secours Mercy Health Foundation. The Secours Health System covers 7 states and 2 countries, and this large health system foundation has remained very focused on building its long-term vision throughout this COVID-19 pandemic. They're using a well-planned approach to advance their now, near, and far vision. Tim has been with Secours Mercy Health, or Mercy Health, since 2015, and he served as president and CEO of Mercy Health Foundation in Toledo. And prior to that, Tim served Bowling Green State University 14 years, and he capped off his service to Bowling Green as the president and CEO of the Bowling Green State University Foundation, serving as its top fundraiser. And Tim graduated from and I have to say it that way, Tim, the Ohio State University Fisher College of Medicine. Tim, it's great to have you join our audience today. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Bill, for having me here. And I look forward to our discussion.
So Tim, let's jump right into it. As you navigate the unfolding coronavirus pandemic, in what ways are you and your team finding opportunities for alignment across your health system that are having the greatest impact on your fundraising results and your impact in the communities you serve?
So a number of things have transpired as we were entering the pandemic, but before that, we had been spending time. Everyone should keep in mind that the Secours Mercy Health Foundation, as it is today, has truly only existed now for roughly 10 months. We were first formed on January 1 of 2020. And so we've only been functioning in this way for a very short period of time. And we spent much of 2019 focused on how do we get Secours Mercy Health both at a system level and at each of our individual markets. And the foundation serves 13 different markets across those states that you introduced us, started the session with. And so how do we get to be recognized truly as a strategic revenue partner for Secours Mercy Health? That was the focus in 2019. 2020, as we started, we were preparing to elevate that and continue that, increase our fundraising. We sat actually about 2 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks before the pandemic actually hit, and we're setting our targets for 2020 and a little bit beyond. We had already completed a strategic 3-year strategic plan for the foundation. All those pieces were in place. What transpired is when the pandemic hit, in a very short period of time, Secours Mercy Health at a system level in particular, but in many of our markets, not all, it wasn't universal, they quickly pivoted and turned to the foundation seeking assistance, guidance, financial resources, access to the greater community for such things as food, as PPE, for all these types of pieces, funds for acquiring ATVs and special massaging recliners for the frontline staff that were going above and beyond in long days and long duties. And so it really started to create that better alignment because of the pandemic and the needs that were there very quickly. Secours Mercy Health, within less than a month, had already identified the struggles financially that they were going to face. And they quickly turned to the foundation, and we quickly turned to our board and had special meetings to support our associates that were going to be furloughed. We knew that as a healthcare system and even as a foundation, we were going to have to reduce cost in order to get through the pandemic. And so we furloughed a number of associates. And the foundation was asked to commit $60 million to help hold those associates financially harmless during that period of time. In addition, we were asked as part of those funds to support daycare for those frontline workers that were critical, because during that period of time, if people remember, there was very limited daycare available, and a lot of times it costs you considerably more. And so we helped on that front. Another part where kids were normally would have been in school, suddenly were no longer in school, so they needed daycare where they never needed it before. And we also provided funding for elder care for those that had been having a responsibility as well to take care of a parent or another loved one. At the end of the day, through the end of September, we had provided $42 million in support for that. That had a ripple effect throughout the entire Secours Mercy Health of that commitment, that support. And it has truly taken the foundation from a nice to have to a critical partner with Secours Mercy.
Yeah, that's great, Tim. So Tim, now near and far are common language or becoming common language across your system. And I say all of us need to take an active role in shaping the future that we want versus the future this pandemic has handed us. So how are you and your team focusing on the here and now and then the then and there? And in what ways are you keeping perspective and maintaining inspiration?
So what we did is actually flip that model, and we're focused on the farm. So what is fundraising going to be like? What is the foundation of tomorrow? What is Secours Mercy Health? Those that turn to us for care, the communities that we're in that are looking for us to help stabilize and strengthen them coming through the pandemic and everything else that's going on in society in 2020. What does that look like? And then most importantly, where are our donors going to be? What's the donor environment going to be like next year, the year after, and the year after that? And how do we better start to align and prepare for that? So we first looked at what should we be, what could we be, what do we have to be out in 2022, 2023, and beyond. Built those targets, those expectations, both from deliverables and structure and organization. And now we have been reflecting on what are we today? What did we learn through the last 9 months of this pandemic? Where did we improve ourselves? Where did we find that we have vulnerabilities? And where did we find that perhaps we were just going through the motion of the past? And now we're developing the structure of what the future would look like, both from an organizational structure, but mostly on deliverables. We're still going through a situation where some people are comfortable starting to come back together again. And there are a number of people that are still very fearful of it and are not comfortable. And so how do we create a personalized giving experience? How do we make it very personal, even when we can't be in a personal environment? And so we're working through those means. The whole world has shifted far more into a virtual environment than it ever has. I told our team early on in the process that whoever came up with the saying, you can't teach a dog, an old dog new tricks, was totally wrong, because this old dog's learned all kinds of new tricks. And there are some, I'm not going to go back to the way I used to do it. I'm going to continue to do it the way I've adjusted. I'm not unique. I'm not different. Our donors are going to be the same way. And so we have to be where each of those donors are going to be in the future. And how are we aligning to do that? And we have to do it both, because we have a system approach. We have system functionalities that support each of our markets, but we still have markets that are keenly responsible for fundraising locally to keep the monies locally as the donors want and the donors have desired, and the most impact's going to take place. And so how do we continue to dovetail those together as we move into the new world?
Yeah, the emphasis on donor intent has not ended. we all like to share successes, but I think we learn sometimes when we hear about other people's challenges as well. So can you discuss any challenges that you might have faced as you're advancing this strategic vision across your system, and how you're helping advance through those challenges during this global pandemic?
Well, the challenges, some of them were inherent mostly to the situations. So historically, I had traveled amongst all of our markets and our leaderships on a very frequent basis. That all ended in the middle of March, at least for the time being. And so I'm more accustomed to, especially with the team, having very close and personal touch relationships, being able to be there, sit down, have those discussions further. Much of it has been virtually. And so what I would say, one of the things that perhaps I learned is that when that shifted, though we spent some focus on trying to bring team together and having some dialogue and discussion in the virtual world, and we tried to support our market leaders, the executives within the markets, to support the people that work within the same community and the same locations, even though we were all separated and required to work remotely, and still are yet today. If there's anything I would have done differently, would have been more frequent, more regular communications in this type of an environment with all the team, to keep them fully engaged and comfortable. It was a trying time for everybody, a scary time for pretty much all, and losing that personal touch was a thing that I look back on that was a huge challenge that we need to continue to refine and improve.
Yeah, as you're refining and improving, what do you think are some of the most, to our audience here, what do you think are some of the most important programmatic and strategy changes that they should be making coming out of the COVID-19? And if there's examples you have, or just, in theory, what do you think are the most important programmatic and strategy changes they need to be thinking about?
So, historically, we, as I think the fundraising profession, have been very keenly attached to their hard copy, glossy pieces. And so one of the things that we've learned through the virtual touches that we had, and it elevated extensively, especially April, May, June of this year, is that there are tools within that capability that can be utilized even in a personal one-on-one relationship without having to go through the cost and the work to create those documents, some of which sit on shelves and never actually get used, some of which get shared but never actually retained. And so how do we continue to improve that? And that's a big focus of where we're going. Can we create virtual reality type experiences that a gift officer could carry with them and be able to share it? And when it's a donor that isn't comfortable and still meeting face to face, they can connect through and share information that way, that they can see it online and virtually and still experience the impact that their philanthropy could have on the people that turn to us in the communities where they live, work, and have pleasure. And so the reality is we continue to need to refine and improve ourselves across those means.
So, you mentioned your focus is on the FAR, and to focus on that, you have to be prepared. I like to share one of the quotes, coaching quotes that says, preparation is one of the keys to excellent performance. So tell me a little bit about how you and your team are preparing strategically for the future. You mentioned a little bit about the planning. Tell us a little bit more.
So it's going into specifically the primary, I would say, umbrella focus is how do we increase our return on investment? And there's three ways you can do it. You can raise more money, you can cut expenses, or you can do a little bit of both. And so we're looking at doing a little bit of both. And so we're analyzing, where do we have shortcomings around individual major giving? Where do we have shortcomings as it relates to plan giving? Two areas as we benchmarked ourselves against AHP and our peers, that we had gaps. We could see that we saw this before the pandemic. We saw it actually in 2019, and we're preparing to adjust. This is now elevating our adjustment. We've accelerated our programs. We're looking at corporate and foundation giving. Do we have the right team players in the right places that can help us? And again, how much of it should be locally and how much of it could be done, because of the reach and the breadth of Secours Mercy Health itself, that we can engage, especially across corporations and some big national foundations. We know grants that we can be very good and efficient at, but we don't do grants across the entire foundation. Some of our markets are pretty slow to the table. So how do we take the talent we currently have and help them broaden their reach to some of these other areas to start building programs? And then as we build a program, we can build team specifically more close to that location to help do that at the same time. And so we're going through all of our revenue mechanisms and how can we generate those. The other areas we're looking at and scrutinizing very closely are events. Prior to the pandemic starting, just in specific fundraising events, we have 13 foundations. We're doing 40 fundraising events. And so how efficient and effective are they? How good are they? Who are we using to implement the events? We are finding in many instances, we had major gift officers and staff and locations working very directly in these events. Well, you're taking your most important resource talent-wise and putting them in your lowest return engagement. So do we need to do all these events? Can we do them more efficiently and better? One of the things the pandemic has triggered for us, we've already had 2 virtual events in 2 of our markets, and we have 2 more coming up very soon in 2 other markets. And so we have a task force looking at the virtual events versus the in-person events. Can it be meshed together? Is there some assimilation of those activities? And then they're also looking ultimately at each and every event. Are they worthy of continuing, or do they need to be modified and possibly discontinued? And then at the same time, we were already on track to continue to create efficiencies in our handling of data and gifts and materials. And so what do we need to do to move it to the next level and really start to tie all the pieces together? And we continued much of that even in the midst of the pandemic, coming together as Secours and as Mercy Health. We had 2 separate donor databases. It was merged right in the midst of the pandemic. We were on schedule to do that. That team stayed on that schedule and made that happen. And so how do we continue to refine those pieces? So that's the far looking out there, and now tearing it to the very intimate details of today, what we need to do to get to where we're going.
It's interesting. Here we are, we're late October. I'm interviewing you today to something we're going to show December 3rd, and the world changes rapidly, particularly during this pandemic. And we often say with strategies, they need to be dynamic, not static, not something you put up on a shelf. And we know the world may change even from today to the time of this viewing with our audience here today. The right decision yesterday might not be the right decision of the future. The world could change. So how are you, as you think through your strategic planning and your fundraising, how are you building flexibility and adaptability into your plans for the future?
So first, that adaptability, that change, the flexibility is a heavy mindset. And so we're first leading with continuing to refine our new culture, our new environment, our new mindset, that we are not made up of 13 foundations. We are the Secours Mercy Health Foundation operating in 13 different locations. And so what's best for the foundation that is ultimately best for our healthcare system, our communities, and those that turn to us for care. And so we're starting again with how do we build that part? Because if you don't have the right environment, it's always going to be a challenge to be flexible and make change. Human nature is going to enter into it and create some difficulties in that regard. And so a big part of the focus is to further that culture. At the same time, the way we had organized in 2019, preparing and merging all of our foundations together, was to be able to offer some of the broader based programming across all markets, having talent very focused and very experienced and very talented and the works around communications, annual giving, stewardship, events, and so on. We continue to refine them so that they can be prepared to flex, and then we just offer it very more in a concierge type program back to each of the markets, so that anything we do is more specific and reflective of what's going on locally. That allows us the flexibility. We've been building in this model because I don't, and I think pretty much the team does not believe that Secours Mercy Health of today will be the Secours Mercy Health maybe even tomorrow. That we will continue to broaden our reach and our touch, and we will go from 7 states and 2 countries to, maybe 10 states and 4 countries. Whatever it would look like, we have been going into this to be prepared to flex and adjust as those days come in the first place.
I can't help drawing the parallel when you talk about 13 independent foundations coming together. There's a great book out there, 1776 is actually the title, and it talked about how these independent Confederate states came together to be a union, right? Well, we all know that's the United States of America and how that happened. And boy, there are a couple of parallels there on how you maintain that independent state and that local feel, as well as become a part of a strong union, and what it takes to do that, and some of the sacrifices and some of the opportunities and the changes and challenges there are. So I'm drawing parallels to that. But Tim, when it comes to how your teams handled this pandemic and your fundraising and your strategic planning during it, what are you most proud
of? First, that flexibility we were just talking about. So when the pandemic hit, as I said, we had just met, and it was like March 5th or something, and laid out 2021, and we're actually setting up our 2020 and actually setting up then for 2021. And some 7-8 days later, the announcements coming through Secours Mercy Health that we're going to working remotely by Monday. I think it was March 16th, whatever that Monday was. And so how could we pivot and make adjustments? We left the same targets and markers out there that we had developed just shortly before that. They still are our targets for 2020. Those were stretch targets at the time, and we continue to work to stretch and meet those. And I'm proud to say that the team has done a great job, and through 3 quarters, we were bang right on target to achieve those expectations. But we pivoted, so where there was less direct personal interaction and some of that work, we started to flip. Instead of what can we do as far as cultivation and solicitation, we shifted to more of a stewardship, and we led with discussions about how are you doing, are you okay, is there anything I can do for you? And often that did lead into further discussions where those donors wanted to know, what could they do for us? Do you need anything? Could I send you a gift to help you get stuff to support your front line? Do you want food? Can I get you any of those items? So it did propel even some giving at much smaller levels than what maybe normally be realized. So I was very proud of the flexibility the team shifted. We went very heavily, as I stated, into a bit of direct mail. That team created a number of pieces. I think in 60 days, they had some over 300 touches to broad-based alignment of donors, board members, community, individuals, and companies at the same time using direct mail, email, social media, anything that we had, things we had not actually really done much of, we were now doing full board. They moved into it, did it very swiftly. The market leaders pivoted, supported that, helped provide the information, got the details back so that we could better implement. So overall, it was a response. We ended up through the furlough process, we furloughed more than 1/3 of the entire foundation. And so people that were still working shifted and adjusted to try to support those that were on furlough, to stay in contact and assure them and make sure that they were okay. But they also had to make their own adjustments. People had to pick up the work that the 1/3 was doing that are no longer there to do it. And so people had to pick up and do things they had not done before. And those that were still working, how could others support some of that work to take the pressure off of any one individual? So I'm just extremely proud of how the team responded And at the same time, their personal lives are flipped upside down. They're going through personally the same thing the whole world was going through, and yet they stayed in tune and were willing to do and offer up help wherever it was needed.
Yeah, you mentioned that Bon Secours will still evolve. What it is today may not be what it is tomorrow. But here's a reflection question, Tim. Where it is today and where you thought it would have been 2 years ago. Let's put you back in a time machine. How has it moved forward strategically in the last 2 years that even surprises you, or kind of shows you that good preparation helps an organization move forward like this?
Well, so 2 years ago at this time, to be perfectly honest, the Bon Secours Foundation leaders and the Mercy Health Foundation leaders had not even interacted yet. Bon Secours Mercy Health.
That's kind of why I asked the question 2 years.
Yeah, the health systems merged in September of 2018. Yeah. And the foundations were kind of put on the queue to follow through a bit later in the process. And so it was December of 2018 was the first time we actually had the foundation leaders come together for an in-person meeting and gathering. Had social meals, dinner, cocktails, the whole works. So 2 years ago at this time, we hadn't even got that far. I had met most of their leaders, but that was the only common touch point. And so when you look forward, then we went through a whole journey just in 2019. At that time, there were 14 markets. We have since, as a healthcare system, left Ashland, Kentucky, and the foundation has as well, leaving all those resources from the foundation in the Ashland, Kentucky market. So we went from 14 to 13 because of that move. But we went through the process of merging all the Bon Secours foundations that were separate 501c3s with the Mercy Health Foundation that had, for the most part, moved to one singular 501c3. That process in and of itself we had 35 different board votes to make that all happen. At the same time, we went through the original org redesign of bringing the two of us together and put us into pretty much the model that we're in today. We continue to tweak it and refine it and have moved in that direction. We had been developing, as I indicated, a strategic plan back in 2019, at the early part of 2019, before we were even merged. And so we had that piece put into place, and we continue to function under the strategic plan, though it's probably very much is time for it to get refreshed. It's got 2021 as the last piece on it. And so we'll start to look at that in early next year to develop a whole new plan coming off of now near far as we go forward. How we've come together, the mindsets, the cultures, the willingness of the 13 to become one, to recognize they're part of one, is really the part that has astounded me, that it has happened pretty smoothly and very quickly in doing that. And so the end game of where we're at is ahead of schedule of what I thought it would be. It's still pretty much following a similar target. I'd say, we've curved a bit around the road here and there, but for the most part, we're still very focused on how can we be the foundation, the Bon Secours Mercy Health, our communities, and the people that turn to them for care. How can we be that foundation that they can count on us, they can rely on us, and we will be there with the resources that they need when they need them. And so we stay focused to that. We stay focused on how do we best serve our donors? How do we best meet their expectations, their needs, their desires of the impact that they're going to have? And that becomes our real driving force to get there.
Tim, I have a favorite interview question that I always like to ask, and it was once asked to me, and I love the question so much I now adopt it for when I interview people often. If you had one do-over in the last 6 to 8 months, what would you do over?
The biggest thing, I think I already alluded to it, would be staying closer to the 90 plus team members. early and frequently. We did it fairly early. We didn't do it frequently, probably enough. That would be the part to me that I would have liked to have done. Could we have been better prepared? I suppose, but we pivoted so swiftly. The team that stepped forward, I think that, they had done a great job. It allowed for a bit more creativity. The other part probably would have been, and I continue to work to improve just in myself, but encouraging it to others, is to better trust and delegate even in the crisis. I think it's common to delegate and trust when the world is a little bit predictable. I think what tends to happen is when the world is in chaos, at least what I've experienced, is you pull it in tighter. And I think that that is probably a fault that I in particular and others within our team, we held it too tightly as opposed to trusting and pushing out. And that is part of that not connecting very quickly with the overall team so that they had a better understanding again of the outcomes. This will be okay, and if we stub our toe along the way, that will be okay too. We'll learn from it, we'll adjust and make those changes. So that would be the things. If I could have a do-over, I'd do over.
Well, Tim, this is our last question, and again, I have to tell you, thank you. I know that the practical and wisdom that you share with our participants here is very appreciated, and Health Giving also appreciates our work with you, and I hope that we've been some success of some of the things that you or some of your individual foundations are doing. Tim, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Your reputation as a top healthcare leader is well deserved. You should be very proud of the impact you're making at Secours Mercy Health and the impact you're making across the country as you think about those states and those countries that you're engaged with. Last question here, Tim, though, as a leader, what's the most important mindset one should have to help them while they're developing their organization's strategic plan and their vision?
So for me, I would say, and I would encourage it to any other leaders, and I have a little placard that reminds me of this all the time on my desk, even here at home now. It's not about me. It is not about what I'm looking to do. It's about, again, the donors, what they're trying to create, the impact they're trying to have. It's about the teams that help deliver those pieces. And ultimately, it's about those people that turn to us to make their life better, to make it whole when it's broken, to help them through their transitions in life. And so it's always keeping those three pieces in perspective, that it's really all about those. It has nothing to do directly with me. And if you stay focused on that, your strategy, your vision, and your direction, I think will be much clearer.
Good stuff, Tim. Thanks so much. And thanks again for being a part of today's Health Philanthropy Summit. And thank you to Ohio AHP as well for being a partner with Health Giving to do this. We really appreciate it. It's great to have great leaders like you, Tim, engage with us. So thank you.
Well, Bill, thank you for including me in your event, your seminar, and thank you for all the great work you and your team are doing for us. As you mentioned, you're an integral part of us getting to that far, and you've been part of helping design and develop some of the components to it already. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.